All right.
Yeah. Welcome,
Good
sir.
evening.
Welcome.
Namaste and good evening, everybody. Happy to meet all of you one more Thursday. And we have taken a topic with which I guess many of you are in a way familiar. The topic, to remind you all, is anonymity, the bliss that nobody seems to want. In the teachings of Krishnaji, it is said to be anonymous is freedom, is such bliss, such happiness. Happy is the one who has nothing. That kind of statement is made, and all of you will agree with me if I say that this theme of anonymity is closely connected to the burden of becoming. Man's sorrow is in wanting to become, is another insightful statement by Krishnaji. Everyone wants to become somebody, and in a simpler setting, the same truth is conveyed by the well-known statement, the grass is always greener on the other side of the river. The grass is greener on the other side is common wisdom, and yet there is hardly anybody who doesn't envy the other side, the grass on the other side. This topic of anonymity, which literally means being not known. Who is anonymous? When you don't know who a certain person is, as you know, you get a letter and you don't know who has sent it. Then you call it an anonymous letter. You get an email and again, you really don't know who has sent that email. Then that is called an anonymous email. In those cases, an anonymous letter, an anonymous email or emailer, an anonymous donor. Sometimes there are institutions which have received a huge amount, and probably one or two people who have actually received it know who sent that money. But for the sake of public, they announce this donation is from an anonymous donor, meaning someone who doesn't want to be mentioned. So why are we saying there is bliss in anonymity? This we have to examine. Everybody looks for happiness in becoming somebody, and nobody seems to be interested in being not known at all. Why is one afraid of anonymity? Why is one afraid of being nobody in the society? Though everyone knows when you are a tourist and you are in a different country, it is such a relaxed feeling. You are a tourist and you are visiting, let us say, France, and let us say some election is going on, and there are two political parties who are contesting. It's a neck-to-neck fight. But you are a tourist. The locals are saying The results will be out in 2 days, and the locals are anxious. Some are for party A, some are for party B. And you, walking around Paris or other cities of France, are neither anxious nor hopeful of any particular result. You don't know the two parties, you don't know any candidates, and nobody knows you. So you are anonymous, and it is acknowledged that to be a tourist is such relaxing feeling. Of course, you should have enough money in your pockets. You should bear all your expenses. That's a different matter. But you neither belong to this political party nor that political party. It is said, even in religions, if you belong to a religion and you somehow end up at a place where people of another religion are in larger number, you feel uncomfortable. And sometimes the people in larger number in that other religion may in fact corner you. Sometimes even persecution is heard in human history. But imagine you don't belong to either this religion or that religion. You are a friend of all. That also is a kind of anonymity. I believe Jesus Christ once went to watch a football match, and that town had almost 100% Christians. But the interesting part is half of the Christians who were citizens of that town were Catholics, and other half were Protestants. And that day, watching the football match, there were almost 50-50 attendance by those Protestants and Catholics. Now, Jesus Christ went there, nobody recognized him. He sat amidst all those spectators, and when the match began, the match was between a team of Protestants and a team of Catholics. When the Protestants made a goal, Jesus Christ thoroughly enjoyed the way the players sent the ball into the goal, and Jesus stood up and applauded. Now, all the Catholics in the spectators area thought of him as being a Protestant. See how happy he is that the Protestants made a goal. But after 10 minutes, the Catholics made a goal, and Jesus again stood up and clapped and applauded and almost danced. Now, all the Protestants thought that this new person in our town must be a Catholic. And then again he stood up and applauded when Protestants made a goal. Again, when Catholics made a goal, he stood up and applauded. Now the spectators were very confused. Why is he applauding? Why is he celebrating a goal by either group? Is he a Protestant or is he a Catholic? Then the last part of this humorous episode is more and more people were heard whispering that the fact that he is applauding goal by both Protestants and Catholics shows that he is an atheist. He is neither a Protestant nor a Catholic. He is an atheist. Imagine Jesus Christ, as you know, they call him Son of God and whatnot, was labeled an atheist. That is why probably every one of us fears being anonymous. For we will not be accepted in any group, any section, any political party, any religious or cultural category. All right, one may wonder, so what? Nobody takes me as belonging to their group. What do I lose? Well, that is easier said than done. A human being or the human mind very much wants to be a member of some group or other. Therefore, this topic, anonymity, has connection with, on one hand, belonging somewhere, being a member of some group, and on the other, it also has much connection with becoming some VIP, becoming an important person. Now, as we become important on the basis of wealth, on the basis of some power or position, everybody knows that along with the special position, along with the extra money, there is increased insecurity also. My chair may not be with me tomorrow. This wealth may not be with me in the coming year. The government may put new taxes, or there may be a new law being implemented, and so on. Even kings are insecure. I believe Shakespeare had written in one of his plays, "Uneasy lies the head upon which there is a crown. Uneasy lies the head under the crown." So in his own poetic way, he pointed out this wisdom. Being a king, when seen from a distance, could be a matter of envy. Look, he is the king. Look, she is the queen, and whatnot. But ask the king himself privately. Ask the queen herself privately. They will have their own woes. In fact, in history, we have good number of cases where a king who was ruling got massacred, got murdered. In India, the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was taken away and put in a little prison cell in, I believe, Burma, what is called Myanmar today. If you see the movie sometime back, it came out, Manikarnika, that is on Jhansi Lakshmibai. Jhansi Lakshmibai and her husband, who was the king before she took over as the queen, had adopted a little boy, and that boy was growing up like a prince, and that boy was scheduled to become the next king. But then the British defeat Jhansi Lakshmibai. Lakshmibai dies in the war. What happens to that boy? Like Bahadur Shah Zafar, that boy who was to be the king, mind you, was taken away, I guess again to Burma, and was left there. So when we have power, money, position, reputation, which is we are somebody, along with the benefits, along with the limelight, there is constant fear of somebody usurping our power, somebody unseating us, somebody maligning our reputation, and whatnot. Now, we are not, this is an important clarification, we are not talking about whether to have a position or not, whether to have money or not, whether to be someone known or not, that outside story is a different matter. When we say anonymity is bliss, we are considering the psychological domain. Whether we are rich or poor, whether we are in power or not in power, psychologically, are we attached to power? Do we, suppose we are poor, do we dream of becoming rich? Suppose we are not holding power, do we dream of having some power? And in the process, do we envy those who have power? That is the issue. Now, anonymity would be bliss when, in the psychological domain, the urge or the aspiration or the desire for power, fame, name, position, etc. is uprooted. That uprooting the desire to become somebody is indeed bliss. And the interesting part of the story is, once there is the uprooting of the ill-conceived desire to become, then we are in bliss, whether we have power or we do not have power, whether we have wealth or do not have wealth. Suppose we do not have wealth, anyhow nobody bothers us. Suppose we have wealth, in as much as we are not attached or bound to that wealth, we are at peace. We find out what may be done, what can be done in a situation of certain conflict, certain confrontation, or as I said before, some new laws, some new taxes, or we come to know somebody is aiming their guns at us. In all these circumstances, we are certainly not talking of inaction. We are not talking of, in the name of detachment, we become stone-like. That is a misunderstanding of detachment. Therefore, Krishnaji used to say, do not cultivate detachment. Because if somebody were to cultivate detachment, where he has a concept of what it is to be detached, and embracing that concept, this man, it could be lady also of course, but for simplicity, let me say, pursuing a concept of detachment, this man begins to walk in a certain way, talk in a certain way, issue statements in a certain way, etc. How foolish. To actually be detached is very different from conceptualizing detachment. Therefore, in the teachings, we are warned, we are cautioned not to pursue an ideal or a picture or a fancy or a concept. We are rather awakened to the fact that the wisest thing that we could ever do is to notice the urges in us, to notice the aspiration that might be bothering us, and in the present context, to notice the value we have attached to becoming somebody, and to be more explicit, to notice our fear of anonymity. Sometimes we openly say, well, if this money is taken away from me, if that property is taken away from me, if this chair is taken away from me, I will be left as nobody. So we dread that feeling of being nobody. But that is all because of not thinking thoroughly, thinking through our own behavior, our sorrow, our panic, our fear, our loneliness, our sense of being important, or our sense of nobody giving us attention. All this is sense, all this is idea that our mind harbors. If we have not thought through what we have been doing, how we have been behaving, more than outwardly, how we have been behaving psychologically, leave alone issues of being famous, being known in the town, etc. Even other issues like feeling bored, feeling lonely, or feeling useless, feeling tired. I would even add to this list feeling sleepy. Human life is so complex, friends, that a lot of people, when they feel sleepy, maybe during a lecture like the one going on, they do not know that sleepy sense, what actually is contained in that sleepiness. Is it because of maybe the lecture being boring, or is it because you are already hijacked by some desire? You are already pursuing some fancy, and that fancy of yours is not being fulfilled by the book you are reading, the TV program you are watching, or the lecture you are hearing, or the company you have with you. Your family, your friends, your social group are not pandering to your whims, your ambition. Then you feel bored. You feel bored not so much because of the objective dimension of what is in front of you, but it is the subjective dimension of your mind being caught in a certain dream. You want to become something, and the people around you are not helping you do that. They are not helping you. They don't seem to be promising towards your becoming whatever you wanted to become. Then there is boredom. There is even tiredness. In fact, people have heartburns or heart attacks also, all because of the mischievous working of thought. Thinking is such a terrible thing in human life. Though on one hand we pride ourselves over our capacity to think, on the other, it is beyond any doubt that thinking is the main cause for unending unhappiness, unending insecurity. So, when we say anonymity is bliss, it is the absence of any confusion, absence of any confused chasing of egoistic dreams, wanting to become or wanting to be better than somebody, or wanting to be not less than anybody. Sometimes it is of that kind. Comparison, competition, etc. make us dread, fear being behind. So and so achieved that much, and I am nowhere, I am way behind. And that kind of self-judgment can even kill a person, can destroy the peace of the person and of people near and dear to him. Therefore, let me sum up whatever I have shared in a few words. Anonymity, which literally means being unknown, implies a certain cleansing of confusion within oneself. In one's own understanding, one neither is anybody nor wants to become anybody. That is anonymity. When in one's own understanding, not outwardly, outwardly one may be a member of a parliament, outwardly one may be a CEO of a very prosperous company. We are not talking about what you are outwardly, but whether you are a CEO of a multinational company or member of parliament of England or India, inwardly, in your understanding, you say, I am playing a role and by myself, I am nobody. Therefore, the understanding of being nobody and the absence of any urge to become somebody, or when you are not anybody in the social eyes, no regrets over not being anybody, all this comes into what we are calling anonymity. And that mind, which is thus unburdened, which is free of all these nagging thoughts of, oh, I did not become this, oh, I am not yet that, etc. When one is unburdened of those nagging thoughts, what else can it be except bliss? However, in our ignorance, in our being so conditioned by the ways of the world, to which we too have contributed a lot, we do not want that anonymity. We just brush aside any possibility of anonymity. And if there is a possibility of being somebody in the eyes of the society, we are very eager to go for that option. And in the process, our insecurity becomes a never ending phenomenon. Let me pause here and
Thank you very much, Sadanand. Thank you very much. And
Thank
now
you.
it is open for question and answer. Anybody can raise the hand and ask the question.
Chidananji, can I say something, sir?
Please, Milinji. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I was, while listening to you about, when you mentioned about the unburdening part of it and how the unburdening is related to the aspect of our reactions in our day-to-day life, where it is linked to thinking and, the whole processes of comparison, identification, how we react to each and everything around us, uh, many a times, perhaps without thinking also, most of the time, in fact, maybe. Uh, Now, when it comes to a question like anonymity, it is hinting towards, uh, as you said, unburdening. And if I kind of try and stretch it a bit more, we are moving towards a sense of being with emptiness. So I'm kind of bringing this word emptiness,
Yeah.
uh, and we, this is something can we explore with regard, because when one touches that state, or moment you are moving towards that, the tendency is to run away from it.
Yes, yes.
So can we touch upon that zone? Because unless we touch that zone, uh, you see, we are nowhere coming still near. We are still caught in the realm of thinking, reactions, and so on. But can we shift to some space where possibly it is not to do with thinking? There is another, I wouldn't call it a way, but a sense of touching that emptiness, that one doesn't move away from it and just be with it. Can we touch that zone? I mean, I don't know if I have made myself clear.
No, no, you have, in fact, you have said it so well, and that brings me to make a remark, because I did connect the present topic with the wanting to become and such things. In fact, in the light of your pointing out how emptiness connects to this topic, the point I am now making is it actually connects to the the teaching, the dying to every moment, dying to every bygone moment. As we move into the next moment, is it possible for us to die to the past moment? Or as sometimes these expressions come in these teachings, is it possible for us every evening, in a manner of saying, to empty our consciousness of all the praise we received as well as insults that we might have received, appreciation as well as criticism? Because all appreciation and criticism generally become a psychological burden. By the end of the day, we are either 2 feet above ground if we received praise, or we are sinking in a pit if several people found fault with us. But the art of living requires that we examine this, and if we see the root causes of our having a heavy heart or feeling so good, etc., then we find that that root cause is not objective, it is self-created, it is thought-created. It is some kind of clinging to an image to which we have got attached. So my simple submission there is, on one hand, I fully accept how emptiness connects to this topic. On the other, I made a remark that this emptiness is very intimately connected to dying to the past. Day by day, week by week, year by year, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for showing that dimension.
Durga Rani, please unmute and ask. Durga Rani. Durga Rani ji, please ask. And after that, Dinesh Wagmare.
Yes, sir. Am I audible and all?
Yes, you are audible. I am hearing you very well.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, sir. Charanji.
Yes,
yes,
Durga ji. Good to have a participant from Port Blair.
Port Blair. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, like, I just, in fact, I just had to convey 2-3 points. Like, in fact, when I heard the topic itself, I don't know who chose the topic. It's quite a deep kind of a topic, and the choice is quite good. In fact, I appreciate it a lot. And secondly, like you bring out a lot of day-to-day common examples, and you try to bring the concept close home. That's also really nice. And in fact, I just had one query. I think Christian, this Catholicism and the Protestant and all those groups, I think they have formed after the death of Christ. I think I don't know. Maybe it's just a parable he wanted to bring to notice. I don't know. I may be wrong. Because I think all these sects are the development after the death of Christ. I think maybe just for the understanding. I don't know. You might have quoted that example. That thought crossed my mind. I thought I might as well convey that to you. And regarding this anonymity, it is such a beautiful, the whole, you can say, that very word indicates, like I feel it is not owning up anything, like somebody has some understanding. So just, you might have one had understanding. So why own it up? You just communicate, convey it, and be with it. And you don't, you're not wanting for recognition and appreciation or acknowledgement and all. If something is there, it is there. So why can't that be in that whole thing can be seen in that context? So regarding the anonymity, this is only that kind of a, came to my mind. I thought I might as well share here.
Well said.
Otherwise, that's all I want to say. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your
That's all,
observation,
sir. That's all.
remarks. Thank you.
Sir, I want to discuss one thing. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you
Are you
are.
able to listen me?
I am able to listen to you.
Sir, how we should teach students this thing? Because the becoming is also very important in their life. They have to make their career also. They have to move in society. And at the same time, they should not identify, as you said, with the materialistic values and all that. So they have to basically compete with themselves only, not with the world. So how we can teach them? This is also question to Mr. Milind More, because since he is in that field.
Yeah, I would say that in general, the whole world is making every young boy or girl ambitious. The general influence of the society, which is so much into competition, comparison, etc., is to make this young student, boy or girl, want to become somebody. So, your question, how we may educate them to see the downside of this urge to become is a very practical question. What we need to do is engage them in such thinking where we do not come across as pessimists or somebody who wants to run away from the world and so on. In fact, I think if we have done enough thinking, if we have thought through the whole matter, then we will succeed in expressing this wisdom in a way which comes across to them as a challenge. Like somebody says, I want to have a wonderful job with a lot of salary. Then suppose you say to him or her, that's wonderful, young fellow, but why can't you think of going a step further and doing something where it's not your salary, your job, but you create employment? Then that young fellow feels challenged. Oh, this uncle is telling me something which I did not think of. First, I thought of just my own income and so on. Likewise, in this also, we should challenge the young people. We should say, it's wonderful to become somebody. It's wonderful to be known internationally. All that indeed is nice. But is it possible for you to be happy whether you are known or not known? So we put a question to them. Can you be happy irrespective of your being known in the world or not known in the world? Or another way could be, we could challenge them. Do you have to depend on a designation for your happiness? Do you need to depend on the bank balance? Think about it. In this way, we challenge. And we should not give them the answers. If we give the answers, they reject them. If we just challenge them, they will say, this seems to be interesting. And for a while, let them jump to the conclusion. I need money for happiness. I need a position. I need my relatives and friends to know that I am in such a high place, in a very coveted position. I need that. They may defend, they may justify. Let them do that. But if you have put the seed of a fundamental question of life, the same boy who today defends his ambition, after a couple of days, or maybe when life gives him one or two hard knocks, will remember uncle's words. Yeah, apart from my failing, I realize how much dependent I have become on name and fame. That's true. This dependence is not good. He himself realizes. So what we can do in last one sentence of reply to your question is, we must encourage some fresh, unbiased, unconditioned thinking on this by raising some good questions and then just smile at them. That's enough. The younger generation abhors any ready-made solution.
Because it is really
Without saying openly, they will say, "Who are you to tell me what I must do in life?"
Yes, because it is really challenge. Because this when you praise somebody or you hurt somebody, that is also a fuel which takes best out of him. So many times this in education field, people are forced to take such decisions to hurt students or praise them, to take best out of him. And that we also see in the sports field. So competition is also a part of life. So it is really a challenging question how he can not be identified with the values and of becoming something, and at the same time he takes best out of him. What do you have to say, sir?
So at that young age, where I do agree, it's very difficult for a young person to let go of his goals. So we are not proposing that he lets go of his goals. He doesn't throw away his ambition, but we only ask him. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We only ask him to always see the larger picture. In fact, therefore, we should begin saying, "I'm so glad you want to pursue the studies. I'm so glad you are trying to achieve something." So we just ask some more questions and let him see the larger picture.
Okay, thank you,
We
sir.
should not pour cold water on anybody's enthusiasm. It will be more misunderstood.
Sir,
Maybe
I would also like to ask Mr. More how is handling this challenge because it's
Right,
really
please,
challenge.
Milind to answer.
Yes, a very interesting question, and maybe I could share my understanding of which is born out of living in a place like this, and what my observations are. Some of the things are like, first is the aspect of fear, that can we create an environment in which the children grow without fear. I know it's a very tall order to ask for, but at least we can make an attempt as educators and as administrators to see that we try and minimize the fear. Now that is essential. That is essential because it is needed for the quality of learning to take place. For a questioning mind to kind of exist. Because where there is fear, you will see that the questioning doesn't happen, and that's what we see in the state of conventional education today. So, can I create an environment where there is fear is minimized, if not completely done away with? Can I create an environment where it is enabling for a child to question things fearlessly? Which means again no hierarchy, which means no authority, which means a teacher shouldn't be seen as an authority. Teacher is seen as an equal. A teacher may know a little bit more about mathematics, sciences, and so on, but he's equally at sea when it comes to the question of understanding what fear is or what violence is, because a teacher has similar things, as same as a child. So can we be together and try and understand this while understanding, mathematics and sciences and so on? So which takes us to the question of relationship then, that can I have a relationship with a child where the child feels one with you. You see, child doesn't have fear. A child feels like opening up to you and ask questions. And in that process of asking questions, perhaps something happens which enables him to live within his own skin. You see, he's confident without being dependent on how much marks he has got, for example. He doesn't need to get 100 out of 100 marks, but can he be confident without without the normal parameters or conventional parameters in which we judge our children? So can he be free of that? So these are some of the questions. The other aspect is, our relationship with nature. I mean, if you see, all the Krishnamurti schools are located in beautiful places. And I think one of the reasons is that unlike human beings, nature doesn't react to you see. So the more time a child spends in the nature, there is a certain relationship of acceptance, a certain relationship of, observing things as they are, without any reaction from the, tree or flower. You can just see, you see. And in that process, can I understand what it means to be with what is? Can I understand what it means to looking at a flower or a tree? Whereas our relationships with human beings invariably gets into action reaction kind of a mode, and very soon we get into the thinking and the burning with so many things, and then we try and find out methods and tools to unburden ourselves. So at a school, a place like this, can we create a place? Can we create a place which has a quality of leisure? You see, where one is at leisure, without any pressures, uh, is able to see things as they are, not in any hurry to react to things around. Can he or she live in a very tentative way? Because that creates a quality of freedom, which is so essential to learning. Uh, so I think this is what a KFI school or similar schools, I'm sure, are are trying to understand, because at the root of learning, I think there is a sense of no fear. So can we create that? And it's very difficult, but at least one can make an attempt, and that is what I think teachers in any KFI school or any of the alternative schools, many such schools exist. We are all trying to do that. Uh, that's all I can say.
Suppose some particular boy is not good in studies, so how do you means, treat him, or how do you convince him to do best in
So I
the
think
study field?
we have to look at it in the overall context. I mean, if I can quickly touch upon something which Krishnaji himself said, he said, it is okay to be a gardener. What's wrong in being a gardener? So anything which one is trying to become or achieve through either studies or becoming something, as Swamiji also touched upon some time back, it puts in its right place. That's all. And if a child learns about what is the right place for everything in life, and that's art of living, I mean, that's all is required. We are not teaching a child to be a big person in the conventional sense, the way the world is going around, because we see that it is creating more chaos and conflicts, and that is not good for the humanity. So can a child get the sense of it while being at school, with everything around, and he knows a sense of what it means to be being comfortable with oneself without the pressure of trying to achieve something. If he can experience that, and if as teachers, if we are able to get that get that sense of being with a child like that, it's a tremendous thing. And for that, I think, as you rightly pointed out, that it is a tremendous challenge for the teachers. That is the tremendous challenge of the whole education, I think, is that as teachers, am I there or not? You see, that is a question, and that is a challenge. So it's, as Krishnji also said, that it is more important to educate an educator than the student. So that's a challenging question. That's all.
May I request Harshad Parikh sir? May I request Harshad Parikh sir to say? Harshad Parikh sir.
Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
I have unmuted and then I saying.
Harshad sir.
Okay. Are you able to hear now?
Yes.
Yeah. we are
Okay.
able to.
I like to go back to the topic of anonymity, the bliss that nobody seems to want. We are not talking about children because children are too young, but we are adults and we are interested in the deeper aspect about the psychology. And everybody wants to be happy. So there is one sentence, I want happiness. So if you remove I, like ego, if goes, there is no want and there is only happiness remains. It is very easy to say this, but the whole challenge in this field, psychology, spirituality, religion, philosophy, the real challenge is to be free from this sense of I or me. And that is what anonymity means to me, that there is no sense of being separate and having fear and desire and to become somebody. So people who go into spiritual life, religion, even among them, there is this desire to become is very strong. As I can give you an example that in the time of Buddha, Buddha's cousin Devdatta was also a very respected monk in the Sangha, and he could speak like Buddha, and he had followers too. But even after being in that Sangha for 20 years, he wanted the position of Buddha, and he wanted to get Buddha killed by Ajatashatru, the king. So, in spite of being in a spiritual organization, people are not free from the desire to become and jealousy and all that exists in all spiritual organizations. And that is why Krishnamurti said that the spiritual organizations or even other organizations, it is extremely difficult to remain anonymous. You have to take side. So another example that this anonymity, which is actually a bliss, because when there is no I, there are no problems which are created by I, like fear, anger, jealousy, loneliness. All this comes from this ego, I. So when there is no I, there is a real freedom, but people are real afraid of uh, freedom from this I. I give you another example of Swami Vivekananda when he was a boy, a very smart, intelligent boy, and he came to Ramakrishna. And during that meeting, when Ramakrishna touched Vivekananda, and Vivekananda had that sense of not being, and he was frightened, though he was very intellectual. And he said, "What are you doing to me? I have father, mother." So as long as we have attachments to family, to property, to people, there is very difficult to be anonymous and to be free. The image which comes to me when this word anonymous is like a bird which is flying very, very high in the sky, and the bird doesn't know anybody. Bird is really free, looking at the whole world. So that book, uh, that Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a very beautiful book, is about that freedom of being no self. And so this anonymity is a real bliss, but it is also creates fear in people who are attached. So the real problem is being free from the attachment to people, to property, to even the sense of I or me. And that is the real challenge in whether it's in Krishnamurti teachings or in Buddhist or any Upanishad teachings. And all this starts at an early age, the identification with father, mother, family, with friends, and then we go through this education. There is a comparison, the desire to become better than others. And this will go on for students until I think a person who is intelligent, he will not neglect this side of money. One needs money for survival, physical survival. And after one has earned little bit and then says, okay, I can now do whatever I'm really interested in. And that is what I did. I worked for 4 years in Canada and earned some little bit money, saved some money. And then I felt that, okay, I'm always interested in teaching students in a school. And I came into contact with Krishnamurti, and then everything become like everything was planned for me. It seems like that. So we don't do anything, but if we are really interested in this field of what Krishnamurti or Buddhist philosophy or Upanishad, it's all about being anonymous, having no desire to become somebody important, to have power, position, to become famous. So all these people who are famous and they have money and power, they are not free. They have many fear of losing what they have. So, and there is one other story I will tell you about a king who had become a Chakravarti king, means he had conquered the most part of India and he was allowed to write his name on a big mountain to, to, to say that he was a Chakravarti king. And when the king went to that mountain, he could not find a place to write his name because all previous kings had written their names. So what it means that many, many great people have come, they have conquered, but they are not remembered. And there is no need to be remembered also after we die. It's how we live every day that matters. And Kabir's bhajan, it says, "Mat kar tu abhiman re bande, jhoothi teri shaan, tere jaise lakho aaye, lakho is mitti ne khaye, tu kaun hua balwan." Means even if we become famous, it doesn't mean anything. Even we become a powerful, there is no happiness in that. Only happiness is when our mind is really free and we can look at everything very clearly, whether we are looking outside at nature or human beings or looking inside and seeing how these thoughts and feelings are coming. And out of that thoughts and feelings, no sense of I coming, which wants to change thinking. Because when this I comes from thinking, it creates a duality. I want, that feeling comes. So thoughts and feelings may come in our life, but when there is this awareness is awakened, it can see very clearly these thoughts and feelings, and they don't create this feeling of I which wants to get something. And that is a real freedom. That is what anonymity means. So, okay, I have said almost everything. Anybody would like to ask
Sir,
any question? Yeah.
Mr. Shankar wanted to ask a question. Shankar, please unmute and ask.
Good evening, sir. I have a question like, is not anonymity is just an idea?
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it is an idea if there is a thinking involved and there is a feeling that I want to become anonymous, then it is an idea. But it can become a reality when this awareness, which is awakened, which is not thinking and feeling. It is something looking very, very clearly at whatever is coming. So, in that state, this anonymity is not an idea. It's one is just there, looks at everything, whether it is outside other human beings or looking at thoughts or looking at nature. And I feel that Krishnaji looked at everything like that. My understanding and the way he was looking when I met him, how he was looking, and the way he describes nature, uh, it was not an idea to him. It may be idea to people who want to become anonymous. Otherwise, it may be a reality, and when it is a reality, then the person knows that, okay, somebody may not agree with you and will say, no, no, you have all the desires and all that. You listen to it and you don't create a problem, even when somebody criticizes you. So you can see everything very clearly. Okay. So it is not an idea. It is an idea if we discuss intellectually how to be free from anonymity, and there are any methods for that, and that it will be an idea. Yes. So how do we really look at the whole thing? That freedom at the beginning, which Krishnaji says, how do we look at our own self, the thoughts which are coming? Because if freedom is not at the beginning, then whatever we see, it will create more confusion. So if there is a confusion at the beginning, more confusion is created out of that. And if there is a freedom at the beginning to look, then we can look thoughts and feelings as they are. They don't create any problems. Yes. Any more questions? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
Okay, because I don't see any questions coming.
Yeah.
And I am not a who would like to keep on talking. Only if some question, otherwise my mind is just be quiet.
Okay, sir. So may I ask Milind More to say something? Milind More, sir.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific. Already Chidananji and Harshitji have touched upon it. Maybe I
Yeah.
could just take forward the question which Dineshji had put it, uh,
Mm.
because I see the importance of it, not just in terms of the education for the children at school, but how the question is also related to the educators and to us as adults, because we do deal with our children, we do deal with our grandchildren, and so on, and the society around. Certain aspects which perhaps I can touch upon is, can we bring that quality of affection, a quality of kindness, and a sense of goodness in an environment while dealing with children? When I say children, one can take it forward and extend it to our adult lives as well. But in a when it is touched upon with the children, uh, one can see a certain flowering which happens, and we do see that from the sometimes from the kind of questions which children pose to us as teachers in the school. Uh, and it's a great learning moment for us also, and it reveals a lot in the questions which are asked. So that is one aspect. Other aspect which comes to my mind is that can we in our relationship with the children uh, come up to a moment where can we see the limitations of knowledge while being at school, where the emphasis is on accumulation of knowledge, because there is a board which children have to appear for exams, children have to learn certain things. But can we come to a state of mind where child sees that while it has its relevance in my day-to-day life, it has its relevance in my relationship with society or what I will do in future, uh, but do I see that it is limited because it has no role to play in my relationship with my dorm mate, with my friend? That knowledge has no place when I'm dealing with the question of jealousy or greed with my friend. That has nothing to do with what I'm reading in the books. Can a child discern that? You see, now that's something which is very subtle, you see, and that is can be only touched when there is a quality of affection, a quality of goodness which exists between a child and an adult. A child is absolutely secured with oneself, with the environment around, to kind of be one with what the adult or the teacher is touching upon. Uh, so can we create that? Now, this is something which is very subtle, and thought has no role in it. And I think this is perhaps what is meant by when Krishna ji says that the shortest way is is through observation, is through seeing, is through listening. And knowledge has no place in this. So while learning about mathematics, while learning about the technological proficiency that we are trying to impart in a school, can I touch this aspect which where thought has no role, where thinking has no role, where it is just about pure observation, listening, how to listen, how to see. And when one touches upon it, uh, perhaps a state of mind which is interested and curious, and at the same time it is also still. Can one come upon it? And we do we do see that sometimes it's possible, and that is a ray of hope in every school, I think, like ours. When you see those moments uh, where there's a possibility to be maybe anonymous, just touching upon with today's topic, mind is still, and in that state, nothing kind of bothers. Yeah, that's.
May I request Shakti ji to say something? May I request Shakti ji to say something? Some comments from Shakti ji? Please unmute Shakti ji.
Shakti ji, Shakti sir,
Shakti ji,
please
please
unmute.
unmute. Please unmute, sir.
हाँ ये
हाँ,
यस
yeah.
अनम्यूट नहीं हो रहा सर
हो गया सर, हो गया है. नहीं बोलते ही हो
जी
गया है.
जी
The moment you said no, it has.
जी
So please share your views on this subject.
Sir, I think that there is one aspect of anonymity is, as Harshaji said, that absence of self.
A bit louder,
or
sir.
the
A bit louder.
dissolution of self.
A bit louder, sir.
Sorry. Yeah. Now my voice is coming, sir.
Clear,
How
clear.
can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you. We are listening rather.
Yeah. So one aspect that, as Harshaji said, this dissolution of I or no self, and another aspect is like Milindaji said, that thought has no role in it. There can be still another aspect, which is of, you see, because my understanding of Krishnamurti is purely intellectual. So in that way, I can say that if one sees that what are the problems of not being anonymous and trying to show oneself or trying to become something, if there are problems and these problems can be seen, then perhaps psychologically we can be connected with this question of anonymity. Because you see, for example, now Krishnamurti has also talked about right thinking, and not only in 40s, but in his last lecture he told people, you all must know this, that he said that if you don't think straight, think straight. So that was in his last lecture in Madras. So it's not a question of shunning thought, but being aware with thought. That is what I feel. This is just my viewpoint. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shakti. Harsha sir, you wanted to conclude?
Yes, I agree with Shakti ji that thinking is not the problem. Thinking and feeling will come in our life, and they are necessary too. But what is lacking is awareness, which can look at thoughts very clearly. So even if some anger arising, one can see that anger is arising. That is very important, to see whatever is unfolding in the mind through this choiceless awareness. And that is what Krishnaji's teachings are there. And then thinking, feeling, they don't create any problems. And life moves smoothly without creating problem for ourselves and other people. Okay, I finish. There is no electricity here, so but I'm sure you are able to hear my voice. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Durga Rani.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Good evening,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me, the chance to speak and all. Yeah, it's like good listening to all the speakers, who are like we're all learning, sir. Nobody has become masters or teachers or something like that. So we're all got connected with this wonderful teaching of Krishna ji, and we are all sharing and I think very nice points have been communicated. Like Mr. Shakti has said about right thinking, and even Mr. Milind has said very nicely about how it can be. Um, it can be brought down to the teaching level where the students are, because that is the crux of the matter, like all these things, how we can inculcate in the children, like in Krishnaji's books also, like the emphasis was more on that. Because after a certain point, when you haven't understood all these things in your childhood, it becomes even difficult. So if as a teacher or an educator, if all these things, like Mr. Milinda has contributed very good points. So I just would like to add one or two points regarding this anonymity. Like when we look at the nature all around us, like the trees or the flowers or all the nature, it is a natural kind of role they play, role or whatever it is. When the time comes, the blossom, and when the tree, when it is time, it gives fruits. They never ask for any name, anything like that. So this point also can be contributed to the children. When when we can look at in ourselves also. If something is there, so it will let it come out and let it blossom, rather than owning it up or something like that, or neither taking. Like taking a lot of credit for it or something like that, or just like that, nature itself teaches so many lessons to us. So connecting nature in this way, and from the to the children from the childhood days, and for us also, it's a valuable lesson, and that's what I want to say. And I think without understanding nature, without being part of nature, I think there is no way we can go a little deeper in the teaching of Krishna ji. That's what my understanding. Like I also had been like a passionate reader of Krishnamurti, and whatever that is there. I just feel like sharing and communicating with like-minded people. So that's what I just want to communicate. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Milind Mora sir, I would also like to.
Harshad sir.
Yeah.
Can I say something, sir? Jain Sahab, can I say something?
Yeah, you have to finish it within 2-3 minutes, sir.
1 minute, 1 minute, I will finish it.
Thank
It
you.
is very interesting, Milind Mora sir. What Ram has also asked the same question to Vashishta, and it is mentioned in Yoga Vashishta. Ram asked to Vashishta that how I will move in the society. And this is, I am using my terminology and words and all that. So he has asked Vashishta how I should behave or how I should move in the society. So what Vashishta said, Antareko Bahir Nana, means inner side you should be anonymous, and outside you should be having many this thing, your creativity, or you may have any your assignments and all that. Antareko Bahir Nana, Antastyagi Bahir Ragi, Antar Bodo Bahir Jat, Loke Vihar Rago. Means inside you should be very having all the wisdom and all that, but outside you should be a little bit not that flexible or this thing. You should be judged, he said. So what you have to say on this?
Yeah, I would like to say that all this knowledge of the scriptures, it doesn't really help if it is not working in our daily life. And maybe that is the problem, that in this country, so many great people have lived, but then there is so much, why there is so much corruption and violence and all that, because we have really not understood what these people really were saying, not put it in our daily life. And so that is why Krishnaji used to say that reading Gita is not going to change your life. you look at yourself, your own daily life, and see, learn in a direct way. Not you may read Krishnamurti, but that is also, it can become like a knowledge. Real learning comes when we examine our own daily life and see when there is anger, fear, problems are coming, and at that time to look. That means it requires an ongoing awareness. And without that, we may gather all the knowledge of the scriptures, but it will become like a burden, And so that's why Krishnaji says knowledge, one has to be free from the knowledge. That is what Vedanta is, no? The freedom from knowledge. And the freedom from even what Krishnamurti has said. So not repeating, not quoting Krishnamurti, but speaking from our own daily life. That is what I feel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks to all guest speakers. Thanks to all participants.
Thank you.
Kamlesh sir, please finish it. Thank you very much.